Hi, my name's Irrelevant, and one of my more popular videos is a poorly filmed epic about me changing out the drivers in one of my crate cabs. Today I'm up to it again. I've unloaded my Marshall and crate cab, I got all my drivers out, because today I'm going to be tinkering with these Vintage Traynor cabs. And now, our feature presentation. I may have featured the 412 cab in a separate video, depending on timing and how I cut this. But now we're doing this 212 cab. And one of the first things that stands out about this 212 cab is its size. At first you look at it and you're like, well, that's a dinky little cab. Until you realize, you know, it's a 212. And actually, it's a bit oversized. Now, I, am a 412 kind of guy. I haven't witnessed very many 212 cabs in my personal possession. But this thing, in proportion, if you scaled it up to a 412 cab, it would be an oversized cab, reminiscent of maybe the Mesa dual rectifier cabs, which I find is quite interesting because stock, this cabinet has a pretty good bass response to it. I was surprisingly impressed. Playing bass at modern volumes, it stayed tight. So the stock drivers right now, I'm not sure, but spying through the grill cloth, I can see that there's two different drivers, so this might not be stock. Oh, it has a metal logo. Man, they just don't do it like that anymore. Now this particular Traynor cab, it is their late 60s, early 70s era. Definitely around that time. What do we got here? The model YT-12, speaker cabinet, Traynor Special Twin 12, Yorkville Sound, Toronto, Canada. It was the Long & McQuaid house brand. Before we take it apart, let's play on it just a little bit and see what happens. Where's my pick? Where's my pick? Isn't that always just the thing? I don't think I have a void around here. They're always just hiding, right? It has a very even and smooth high end. A little bit fuzzier and crunchier. It has some interesting 3D definition in the mids. It's not completely as lame sounding as you would expect an old cab to sound. Now right now I'm playing at lower volumes. It has a nice bass resonance to it, really. Let's bring her up a bit. Now, if you haven't noticed, I'm a metal musician. You're only gonna hear shreddy tones from me. Yeah, there's fizz in the high end, but it's smooth. It almost has a mid-scoop tone, and still, at the higher volumes, the low end staying tight on it. Also worth mentioning, it's not particularly sensitive. Like, I'm getting that volume knob on my amp up there, and she's not hurting my ears yet. All right, let's go up a bit more and see what happens. Okay, so you want the good news or the bad news? I pretty much had my amp dimed out there. And that has two KT88s. I know for a fact it was punching 80 watts into this cab at least. And no, it's not going loud. I can see why people might not take these cabs as seriously in modern applications. If you were trying to jam with this, once upon a time, the people who afforded these pieces of equipment they were less financially endowed. Maybe the punk rock screamo bands, the young kids. I know when I was playing Traynor, I was in a Deftones cover band, and I plugged a Metal Zone into a frickin' so they don't go as loud as you need them to for these applications. They would just cycle through hawk chops infinitely. The tone on it is so good though. It's staying tight in the low end. It's not woofing out. It's not as punchy as the 412 with the drivers that are in it, but it's just not going loud. But it has a smooth, the high end is smooth and it almost has a natural mid scoop to it. And there was no ice picks. My ears were not hurting, but then it wasn't going that loud, even with the amp dimed out. So yeah, I could see if I had, even with a head like this, and I plugged it to this cab in a metal band, I'd probably be disappointed. It would sound good, but it wouldn't cut. However, for recording and playing alone at home, it's got a pretty nice sound to it. So one of the things that excites me the most about having this to tinker with, of all my higher end upgraded drivers, I only have pairs. And one of the biggest conflicts I encounter is all my cabs are 412, all my closed back ones anyway. So it's hard to get a proper perspective of what these speakers actually sound like. And if you've tried this before, you know, the X pattern is good, but when you tweak on the cab in such a way that only 2 drivers work, with the other 2 drivers working as passives, and as the air pressure jumps around inside the cab, it's going to directly, proportionally be the inverse on the other speakers. So those passives kind of are throwing out an out of phase signal. So you end up with this weird hollow sounding effect. So the only way for me to really truly hear what those speakers could do is to load them into a 212 cab, proper constructed, closed back. And now I can finally do that. So let's crack this open and see what it has already. All right. As is a good Canadian constructed piece of equipment, this is all Robertson. It might be worn out Robertson, which could be a problem, but we're gonna hope for the best. And there is a lot of screws here. I think there's more screws than a 412 would have, and they're tighter together. They're reasonably well torqued in there. All right, is this gonna come out without a fuss? It's tight on this side. Well, screws are definitely out far enough. Well, let's pull from the bottom then, or from the side. Oh yeah, bud, she's a tight fit, I guess, eh? Oh, did they glue this damn thing on? Ah, here we go. All right, what do we got in here? Oh. Not stock. Not stock at all. So these drivers both look of an Eminence design. It also looks like the front grille is screwed on from the back here, so it's a good thing I didn't try to pull it off. This black one, that looks modern. That's not a very old driver. They're soldered on. I'm gonna have to bust out the soldering iron. Well, either way, we'll get these drivers out of here anyway. We'll get a better look at this cabinet. Those look like Robertson black. Yep, they're big boys. And it definitely looks like, well, let's find out for sure. Yeah, T-nuts. That's excellent. Oh, those are some big bolts. Big bolts. This thing is well put together. What do we got here? Ooh, that's funny because that looks like a vintage driver. I wonder what this is. That's the crappy thing about this. Like, there's no way of getting a straight answer on what's actually loaded into these things. Oh, that silver basket almost reminds me of Celestian. I doubt it though. What's this guy look like? Oh, look at how fresh and shiny that is. These are definitely not old. And we got 2 different ones. So that's interestingly adding to our tone, I'm sure. Is there any identifying marks on these whatsoever? This one simply says 5801511 677409. I don't know, did they have drivers like this back in then? Maybe, is it 1967? I doubt it. 1974? Again, I doubt it. DW15 7403. That looks like it had a price tag on it. I am willing to believe that 09, 2009, and 2003 is more accurately what year these might be, and that they've been replaced more recently. Yeah, no, you'll never get a straight answer. And in fact, some of these numbers come up with other driver listings. So these are numbers that are commonly written on speakers. So if you Google them, you find other speakers with these numbers on them, but they're not these speakers. DW15 came up an 8-inch mid-range driver, and the 677409, or was it 7403, that came up with a 15-inch driver for an organ. All right, so while you weren't paying attention, I went ahead and sorted out this wiring issue. And about the only choice I had was to unsolder these guys. And then I headed over to the local hardware store and picked up some fresh spades. And I've got that soldered onto here now. So yeah, now we can stick whatever drivers we want in there. I'll go ahead and get these guys out of the way. Now we're gonna go ahead and start this party with the Wizards, the Eminence Wizards. Now hopefully these beastly bolts fit through these little holes. Oh yeah. We'll be good. One might question if anyone's ever actually bothered putting some nice, good high-end drivers in an old vintage Traynor cab. Most might think they're not worth the bother, but from the looks of it, this thing is solid 3/4 inch plywood construction. Like, this is a well-made cab. I don't see why you wouldn't want this. I want this. But all right, those are definitely in there now. So we're just going good old-fashioned 16 ohm configurations. So these are a bit too flopskis. Let's just optimize them. There we go, optimized. All right, let's get main power connected. All right, they're in there. And now in order to get proper sound density testing, we gotta screw this all on. Alrighty then. So once again, we're gonna start with low volume. All I'm getting is warmth. And so far these speakers at low volume, all alone, matched in a cab, damn, not bad. I feel like I can add more high and less bass. All right. So far that's better low volume performance than I've been able to get out of these speakers in the open back or in a 412. So let's bring it up. Immediately at 4, I'm getting the same volume I needed to turn the amp up to 6 with the old speakers. All right, now that the volume's up, the highs are just jumping out and that nice mid. So I feel like the bass is getting subdued. So I feel I need more bass now and less treble. Okay. Very sparkly, crispy, no dullness whatsoever. It's just the speakers, they jump out at you. Is that fresh speakers or is that high-end Eminence? I don't know. Well, let's go up there in the volume spectrum and see what happens. I cannot believe how much bass pounds out of this cab and stays tight. Nice. Still, the Wizards are very smooth. There's none of that, just, you know, sometimes when the mids, they sound like they just want to come out and grab you. And I was getting that effect with the Governor Swamp Thing combination, but not so much with this. It's just so even. Now that was with the amp turned up to 8, which is going to be effectively max volume. I started hearing a little bit of fartiness, but I don't think it was the cab or the drivers. It sounds like the drivers were staying tight. And then at that volume, finally the low end was starting to maybe woof the cab a bit, just to say that we're starting to max out the capability of what this cab can handle. Ideally, if you want to start getting to the volume levels of which I was playing there, you might be better off with a 412. Now, the other thing is, I'm not just trying to figure out which speaker I like better. I need to figure out which speaker I like better with my specific amps. So I need to go ahead and hook up the Marshall now. Now the Marshall amp right now is set up for these 6 CA7s, but just to maintain consistency, I'm putting the same preamp tubes in here because actually the preamp tubes that I have in here I also really like in the Marshall. We have the JJ ECC 803S long plate. I got 2 of those in the preamp positions. And I really need to buy another Tungsol 12AX7 for the phase inverter, because that's my favorite phase inverter. I need to bust out some overdrive. Alrighty then, now it's gonna happen. No, this Marshall definitely doesn't sound as lively and excited as the Crate. That's mid-average volume level. Now it's low volume level. Let's bring her up a bit. Now, one thing about the Marshall, it has nowhere near the same amount of low end. It is a pure mid generator. It'll inundate you with this wall of clean mids where you know if you have a solid bass rig right next to it, then it'll knock you on your butt. But on its own, it doesn't have that same that, you know, the Crates or a lot of modern amps have. So far, no complaints, but I'm not wowed by it. All right. Not bad. The Wizards, better than I expected, especially on their own when you hear what they actually sound like. Now, the bass wasn't a problem with the Marshall because the Marshall is just not driving the cab very hard. And there's more variables here, like the overdrive pedal. I might be wanting to try a different overdrive. This bog standard Boss turbo overdrive isn't the best sounding one, but it has more low end than my DoD. Now we're gonna move on to the Governors. Was this camera seriously not recording? It appears that my Atomos may not like high volumes. Sparing you a majority of the installation process, the Wizards are gone, and now in go the Governors. That's kind of nice that the labels are opposing. Oh, how fancy is that? All right, we're recording exclusively with the ZV-1 right now because we can't really trust the Z50 and the Atomos recorder with these sound pressure levels. I still have the Marshall set up, so we're gonna go ahead and try that first. See if there's any magic or miracles. Starting off with bedroom volume levels. Let's see what we got. Definitely a more lively mid already off the bat. Need to bring it up a bit. The Marshall sounds way better with the Governors than the Wizards. The Governors just have this extra liveliness to them that just make it work. And it looks like my face is blown out. Not getting a whole heck of a lot of low end though. My ears kind of hurt, so I'm not going to test it any louder than this. Okay, so yeah, definitely Governors over Wizards for the 800. Now let's transition back over to the Crate here and see how that fares. First, bedroom volume levels. Little dull, little dull. All right, let's bring her up a bit. I'm not wowed. Not yet. Oh, let's bring her up a bit more. This one, it has mids that jump out of you. Yeah, that's where that effect's coming from, where you got those three-dimensional mids that are just kind of like trying to grab you and pull you in. Not getting quite as much thump. Maybe the Wizards might be better lower volume speakers. Maybe they would have been a good alternative to the G12L and similar applications. They definitely sounded dull with the Marshall, which is the reason why I kind of hated the configuration of the G12Ls and the Wizards and the Marshall cab earlier. Yeah, so that's interesting. Come on, lower your voice. The Governors definitely sound like they are going to cut through the mix, but they're not as warm. They're not as I might want to hear. You know, some of the warmth and low end isn't there, but definitely some good present mids. And they don't sound as good at lower volumes as the Wizards do. So now, Eminence Swamp Things. Yes, finally. And unlike the other speakers, the labels are both face upwards for these guys. All right, let's do this and get this done, because as much fun as this is, my ears are hurting. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't always play loud, but when I do, I might be testing speakers. Oh, once again, let's start off with bedroom volume levels. Very mellow. Very clean sounding. All right, let's bring her up. Moderate. And of course, they do really bring out the lows. Yes. All right, let's bring it up a little bit more. They have a lot of high-end sparkle. I just had to turn down the highs. I am hearing ice pick potential. I don't know how much I like that. Maybe these speakers aren't as good as I thought they would be. I find that they might have a little bit less mid definition than the Governors. The Governors add, like, they definitely have a nice crispy mid, but the Governors, the mid jumps out a bit more. And the highs, I almost feel like they have harsh highs. All right, and unfortunately, to really know what's going on, we're gonna have to bring it up even a bit more. Okay, that's all I could do. Ice picks. These speakers have ice picks. Now, Swamp Things are sold as being a good low-end speaker. They advertise them for drop tuning. Maybe with a darker toned guitar, those highs would fill in your sound, because they definitely do have the low end. In fact, it almost felt that they were overpowering this cab and the cab was getting a bit woofy. I don't know. This is a tricky one, man. This is a tricky one. I almost want to put the Wizards back in here because I almost feel like the Wizards were really good with the crate. And the Governors, I love their mid definition, that 3D just like grab you and pull you in effect, but they're lacking in low end. Now the Governors did sound good, pretty good with the Swamp Things. So maybe the Swamp Things filled in their low end. Maybe in a cab configuration where the Governors are at the top facing up more, and then we put the Swamp Things at the bottom to kind of be like subwoofers. And then I almost want to stick the Wizards back in this guy. I want to hear those Wizards again, man. With the crate, they were smooth. They were missing mid-definition, but they were smooth. These guys, too much bite. Not the bite that I want. Well, one last thing to try is with the Marshall. Because the Marshall, it's got a duller sound compared to the crate. Now we have the extra added value-added bonus of my ears, high frequency response at low volumes now is kind of worn out. I'm gonna have to try this test again, and I'm looking at the wrong camera. That must seem uncanny valley. I'm gonna have to try this test again when I actually have my ears come back. Okay, so some of the initial impressions I'm getting here, because this sounds a bit duller, the highs of these speakers, they're not as ice picky, and they're kind of bringing out the Marshall tone a bit more. And then, well, these are bassy speakers, so it's adding a bit more warmth and low end to the MIDI Marshall. Wow, this thing's roaring now. I'm getting a nice roar out of it, bringing up the volume on the Marshall. Now the 6 CA7s that I have in there, the JJs, they have a tendency to have a little bit of a darker high end and a mid roar. And now that I'm getting the volume up on this amp, they're roaring, and these speakers are bringing out that roar. Maybe, just maybe, the Swamp Things are a good choice for an old JCM 800. I'm staring at the wrong damn camera again. Yeah, I'm getting some nice punchy lows and nowhere near as much ice pick. There's not as much ice pick coming off the Marshall. It feels like it matches with these pretty well. And then the Governors are in the middle, and then I like the Wizards with the crate. But for now, I think I've had just about enough of this. I need to sit in silence for the next little while and pretend that I didn't just do this to my ears. And then another day, come back to this and further complicate. Well, sure. Gear, the quest for tone. Whenever you discover a new piece of gear, it does further complicate things, doesn't it? We have these 3 different kinds of speakers, and I am trying to choose my favorite so I can invest in more. Or should I try something new? Should I try something different? I've lost a bit of respect for the Swamp Things. They aren't what I expected them to be, and I don't think they're ever gonna really float my boat with the crate, not from what I'm hearing today. But at the same time, the Wizards, the underdog, the speaker I never expected I was gonna like, I'm thinking they might be a little upset there, giving me some nice smoothness, but maybe a little volume smoothness, maybe not necessarily the cut that I want if I was playing live or jamming, but playing alone and recording with a high gain amp such as the crate, they might be just the ticket. And then the Governors, they just have this 3-dimensional mid that jumps out and grabs you. It makes you feel like things are going back and forth. I don't know how better to describe it. It's an interesting texture, especially with the tube complement that I've put together for this amp. They definitely go better with the Marshall. The Wizards don't go good with the Marshall at all. And then these Swamp Things, they get along with the Marshall rather well. Maybe I should get 2 more of those for the Marshall cab. But then I'm thinking this Governor Swamp Thing combo that I'd been using in the crate cab, it belongs in the Marshall cab. And then something else for the crate should be completely different, which ironically, I did quite like the G12 L35s in the crate amp. It wasn't so bad, especially not at bedroom volumes, but they are even better in that Traynor cab. So, this is going to be one of the more informative videos that I've made comparing these three drivers in a couple different configurations. I hope you've enjoyed this. And these old Traynor cabs, well, if they didn't have value before, they're gonna have value now. Especially if I can go ahead and tell the world that this is one solidly built cab. And it sounds great if you redriver it with something fresh, shiny, and new. It's also gonna be nice to turn off these studio lights. You have no idea what I go through for you people. Ugh.